Hello, everybody, and welcome. Welcome to the Hub, which is our latest initiative of webinars for the AQR. I'm Ken Parker. I'm currently the chair of the AQR, and I've got with me today Mark Earls, my good friend from many years. Good to see you, Mark. Mark's one of the best strategic thinkers around. His life has been full of qualitative research as an account planner, a strategist, a consultant in marketing, communications, and I'm sure you'll be very aware of the books that Mark's written. I should imagine most of you got it on your shelf, and I'll have what she's having. I'm delighted to say his next book is on its way, and it will be on the shelves in November. It's called Copy, Copy, Copy. He's in the final thrust of writing at the moment, and I think he'll be alluding to it a couple of times in today's webinar, which is called What Kind of Thing? Questions, please do submit them as we go along. Type them up, and I'm going to ask Mark if he'll address them afterwards. So it'll be a day or two, I suspect, but he'll definitely be back in touch with you. So, without further ado, I'm going to pass you over to Mark, who will take you through today's webinar.
Thank you very much, Ken. Hello, everyone. I'm delighted to be here. As Ken says, I'm delighted to be anywhere that isn't my study, where I'm working very hard on editing the last few pages of the book. What I thought I'd do today is tell you just a little bit about that, just because it's at the front of my mind. But there's a particular question that's emerging, an issue that I think has particular relevance to market research and insight practitioners, but particularly qualitative research. I think it's a really useful thing that could help me in my work, and I hope help you as well. Anyway, so there we are. That's me. If you don't recognise me, those are my specs. Yes, here's the latest version, the cover of the book. I do like the idea of author of best-selling herd. What you can't see here is to the right of the picture here, I've cropped out the Latin and Greek text, which says famous person in a large organization says this is genius, and etc. ipse lorem. Anyway, so that's the book itself, and let me just explain basically the central idea here. This lovely figure here is the award-winning ceramicist, an artist, Grayson Perry, and he recently gave a series of brief lectures about creativity and what is art and what it is to be an artist. And in the final one, he gave this fantastic line, which I think any artist and anyone who practices in the world of art, whether it's music or visuals or whatever, or writing, will get, which is that actually most of what we do when we try and make something new is based on stuff that other people have done already. He puts it provocatively, originality, and our obsession with originality is for people with short memories. So the book essentially says, don't bother to squeeze that new and unique thought out. Rather think about what you could steal from elsewhere. Steal widely, steal from as far away as possible rather than from next door, and steal with verve. Add your own bit as you go, but steal. Copy, 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 hence the title. Just an example for you. So this fella here is Dave Brailsford, and he revolutionised British cycling. And a decade ago, no one would have thought that the British would lead the world in road and track cycling. Nobody. For the first 98 years of the Tour de France, the premier race on the road in the world, there was not a single British cyclist who ended up in the top three. 2 years later, you not only have a dominance at the Olympics, winning 7 out of 12 golds in cycling on and off the track, but you also have our first blessed Sir Bradley winning the Tour de France as well. So it's just extraordinary, and the team goes on sense strength. He didn't do this by some other means than copying. It's all he did was copy. A very simple strategy, which was he called the aggregational marginal advantage. Look for the little things across the piece and see where you could have some kind of advantage. But rather than work it out for himself, he brought in people from other fields and stole their ideas. So, for example, he realized that if you could reduce sickness in the team by a very small amount, let's say you had one more week for each rider at their peak, then that would be a good thing. That would be a small advantage, but a significant one. And so he brought in one of the world's great experts on hand hygiene. And if you ever hear Dave Brailsford talk about hand hygiene, you'll realise that he's obsessed with how you wash your thumbs, because that's the bit most people miss. Small advantage, but added together over a period of time, exciting stuff. But so his success as a great innovator, a really historic innovator in sport, is based on copying rather than having his own original idea, and copying as far as he can from as far away from cycling as possible. The artists get it, sports scientists like Brailsford get it, and the book argues that we should. Now, this visual here you see now is a selection of the 100 or more strategies that I've identified that affect different kinds of behaviour change in different contexts, and the book has got this fundamentally based on these, so that's a nice thing to look forward to. The book will actually come with a set of cards as well, at least initially. And I want to encourage people not to focus on having new ideas, but to nick stuff from elsewhere, and to nick several things at the same time rather than just the one thing. Now, when I was doing this, it occurred to me that this is not natural. It's not natural in two ways in our culture, one of which is that we really don't like the idea of copying. It's really anathema to our notion of what makes a good thing, and we've still fundamentally got this idea of great individuals, creative individuals who somehow innovate, create new things by either touching the muse, squeezing really tight, or just because they're geniuses and the rest of us aren't. That leads us to imagine that every problem we face is a unique problem that's not like any other problem. It's not a problem that anyone has faced before. And that's very flattering to those people who own the problem, who can solve them, because they become superheroes. Only the geniuses, the superheroes, can solve singular problems. But the truth is, all of us know, and I'm looking at Ken now thinking of many years that we've interacted over work, and we've seen the same problem, similar problems again and again and again, and we know the different kinds of solution that emerge for them. What I want us to do is to admit that that's the case and actually use our experience and knowledge, and use the experience and knowledge of other people to put that to work. Tyranny of the singular, I think, leads us to assume, and this is where we're getting a bit closer to the world of insight and market research, that there is only one answer. So, for example, if you've got a brief about a strategic brief, what's the strategy that's going to win here? What's the insight? What's the piece of information about the audience that's going to change everything? And this is partly, I've got to say, to do with the way that ad agencies and television advertising in particular has been developed over the years. The singularity there is very strong. But marketers generally, insight people too, do this. And I think this gives research in general, but market research, qualitative research in particular, some bum steers. What I want to do is encourage us to, with this other question, to encourage us to look a bit further. Essentially, I'm saying when you say there's one problem, a unique problem never been seen before, there must be one unique answer to this. I think that leads us to ask the wrong kind of question. So we look at the thing itself as if we'd never seen it before, and we look at the detail of it. We say precisely how big is the thing, or what other characteristics might be interested in. How flavoursome is it? How intoxicating is it? How blah blah blah. We look really close as we possibly can. Let's go really get under the skin of this. And of course, we do like the metaphor of depth. Going really deep inside this problem. Getting under the skin, we say. Under the skin. Let's really get to the heart of what this issue is and then find the answer. I think it's a really unhelpful metaphor for us as we go. And let's suggest an alternative. So I think we need to ask more what kind of thing problems. What kind of thing is it that we're facing? What kind of thing is this that I'm being asked to look at? And so, is it an apple or an orange? Two different kinds of things. Or is it fruits that we're interested in? What kind of thing? And what do we know about that stuff? And what do we know about stuff that's like that we could bring to bear? If you work in the automotive sector, there are many other really good things to know about in the automotive sector. And you know, the more you know about what's happened in the past in the automotive world, the better. But if you only know about the automotive sector, you're missing out on a large chunk of opportunity. And frankly, you see the human race as a rather strange automotive obsessed, which we all know that as qualitative researchers and strategists, we've had to dissuade our clients that actually their car is the most important thing in their lives. Right, here we go. So here's one thing I talked about before. There's real straightforward implications for the kind of qualitative methodology that we might use. You may remember seeing me present this around the time of I'll Have What She's Having, or even before. If you think a behaviour is, as the lovely cute fellow on the left suggests, shaped by what goes on between an individual's ears, then the traditional tools of market research, in particular asking people about themselves, or getting them to reveal about themselves and what goes on between their ears, are entirely appropriate and bang on. However, if you find that the behaviour in the market is shaped by the right, what happens on the right there with those gang of them all looking at us with a strange facial gesture there from the one in the middle, that the behaviour is shaped, in other words, by what goes on between people, then the traditional methods are not necessarily the best tools. That's why there's been so much innovation in this social techniques in recent years, because we've realised more and more about this. So this is a really simple example of when you ask the what kind of thing question, and it will immediately shape a different kind of research practice. So I think we start there. That's a lovely picture, but I'm not sure I need repeating that. The second thing is something that I've noticed sitting on the shoulders of clients in recent years, sitting at their shoulders and watching people, whether it's their creative agencies or the research agencies, present back to them. It's very easy for us to get lost in the detail. Very, very easy, but almost all decision makers aren't interested in the detail, really. And I'm sure we've all had that thing. We go, oh, I've got this fantastic debrief. It's now at 72 slides, and it's just too long for anybody, right? And there's so much detail in there. If you just appreciate the richness that I've discovered in this particular study, it's amazing. This is for those of you who don't recognise, this is Borges, the great Argentinian novelist, and here's a short story of his, which is called On Certitude in Science. And it's a story of a civilization that loved building maps of more and more detail and greater and greater scale, until the maps were the same size as the territory they were mapping in exactly the same detail. And clearly what happens then is, like with the South Sea Islanders and their head statues, that the civilization goes bust. There is, I've got to tell you really clearly, in both insight people and researchers giving the feedback on the studies that they've been doing, this is what it feels like very often if you're sitting there. Because I'm just very busy, says the C-suite decision maker. I need to know a thing. I don't need. It's very interesting to read on the plane, but frankly, and a very interesting way to, if I distract myself for half an hour, but I need to know the thing. What should I do? What kind of thing is this? What should I do? Rather than the full detail. So it's just encouraging us there to head off for that. I talked at the new MR seminar last year about the idea of us in the research and insight world as being content businesses rather than study business or information business. And the content businesses understand that they're competing for the very small bit of attention for the users that are out there. I think this is the same direction. It's a similar kind of point. How can you make the work that you do spin around the organization? How can you get it to be the stuff that people use to justify what they do? How can you get it to fit into their world as opposed to be right in our world? As well, of course, as being technically right in our world, and et cetera, et cetera. The third thing is, this leads again to clients being very practical, particularly the people outside the Insights department. I don't know if anyone on this webinar was in the Insights Innovation Exchange in Amsterdam earlier in the year, but we talked about the things, we asked the people attending there what was broken in market research. And one of the things that clients kept saying to us is, I need to know what kind of problem this is and what kind of tools I need to use to solve it, rather than the other way around, which is, what's your fancy technique? And we're all, as research geeks, we love the fancy technique and the new technology and the arguments about different interpretations of how our brains work. That's all lovely stuff for us, but it's not what the senior insight people and their colleagues need to. How can we help them in a world where they're awash with data in their organization? They no longer have this unique access to information about the consumer in the big data era. We need to help them by giving them practical definitions of the kind of problem it is and the kind of solution. So there we are. I can do animations on a slide as well. All is not lost, and just be really clear about this, that I'm not saying this is a brand new set of insights that emerge from this, because I do think that there are a number of people who do great stuff in this space. And I've picked out one of my chums here, Kevin McLean, and I've misspelled his name, which is terrible. He's going to shoot me for that. Fortunately, I know he's not on the call, so we can change the slides before the recording, can't we, Ken? Some years ago, when I first started talking about herd, I used to talk about the Kevin McLean syndrome, which Kevin thinks that that it's his technical expertise that and a particular way of collecting data and interpreting people and their behaviour that's really, really important. The reason why I trust Kevin, as I would trust Ken or the top people in this field, is that what's your judgment? You've seen this kind of thing before. Are we on the right kind of track with this proposed direction, or are there other directions we need to consider? Given your experience and your ability to judge people and judge our attempts to change them. So I think that's a really, really important thing, and I think we underestimate that, and it's very hard in the world of procurement to make that clear. But that is, we know it's much easier to point to technique and technology rather than that bit. That's absolutely vital. Here's another one. This is Grant McCracken, who's a Canadian but New York-based anthropologist, and he is fantastic at making this sort of the mush that is contemporary culture make sense and turn it into things. And I saw him do a seminar last year, and he had this quote there that you'll see on the screen, which is from David Letterman, who about a decade ago, when the internet was just starting to explode, David Letterman's researchers would, on his evening show, find something on the internet and be asking themselves, and he would ask the audience, is this something or is it not? Is it a thing or is it nothing? Is this important to look at? Is it part of a bigger thing, or is it just froth? And this is what Grant does, and it helps us make sense of things and see them. And I'm just going to share with you now, and don't bother trying to read too much of the detail here. This is a fantastic piece of analysis that Grant did about the rise of artisan as a social trend in the US over since the Second World War, and see how it has changed the way that the American food industry works. I think it's just making sense. It's a thing now. I get this. I don't have to constantly look at all the detail. By creating a bucket like this, it's very much easier for me as a marketing person to go, oh, I see. I'll just draw your attention to a couple of things here. On the right of the screen, there's a marvellous moment here where Frito-Lay, that's PepsiCo's food business, use artisanal, and then further down, Domino's launches a range of artisan pizzas. Who'd have thought, eh? WTF, as they say in internet land. So, I mean, this is making a thing of it, out of lots of disparate stuff. Make it easy to understand, make it easy to track. Grant calls this in his great book, the Chief Culture Officer, he calls it the Great Wall of Culture. I think we should all be doing this more, whether you're a qualitative researcher, pure and simple, or whether you see yourself as a broader practitioner. Really is a fantastic tool to understand the things that you see in front of you right now. And then there's the lovely Mike Hall, who I think is underappreciated by many people today in the advertising research space, because when he and Doug McClay did a piece, which I'm sure you remember seeing, Ken, when he first presented it, and I was blown away, because they simply asked the question, what are the main ways in which we think advertising works? Not what's the one way, what's the best way, but what are the main kinds of ways that we as an industry think advertising works? And what would be the ways of indicating that one of those things was being successful or not, that was working well in a particular model or not? And this is another what kind of question. It makes it much, much easier to then review a piece of advertising and research it and give feedback on it if you've got this simple model. What kind of thing, rather than let me examine this, this great new piece of work from Nike as if it was the first time that anyone had done any advertising. Anyway, again, this is something you may have seen before. This is the map that Professor Alex Bentley and I created, and it's the heart of the last book, I'll Have What She's Having. It's a really simple database map of chunking how people choose into 4 simple boxes. It's a really simple thing. I mean, fortunately, there are patterns in the data that allow us to do this. And I'll just for a moment, for those who haven't seen this before, your x-axis there, going from west to east, is independent choice versus social. And there are patterns in data which tell you that. So, for example, if you see a long-tail distribution of popularity, it tells you it's on the east of the map, and a short tail, it's on the west of the map. And then there's informed choice and uninformed choice. If you're interested in knowing more about the maths behind this, then either have a look at the wonderful book, I'll Have What She's Having, or I can send you links to the latest papers on this by Alex Bentley, Mark O'Brien and the brilliant Buzz Brock, brilliantly named Buzz Brock, American economist as well. So happy to send that through to you. The point being, it's simple now. You can ask yourself, what kind of thing have I got going on? Have I got in the Northwest something where people are genuinely considering, this is how most manufacturers think that people think, that the utility of A versus B, emotional or rational or functional, is somehow better than A is better than B. We know that that really isn't how people choose much of the time. We know that much of the time it's perhaps choosing independently, but it's on guesswork because everything kind of looks the same. We equally know that expertise is kind of important. You can see, again, patterns and data underlying this allows you to see that, there are other guitar amps available, but you won't ever go wrong with a Marshall amp. It's good enough for Jimmy Page, don't worry. And then down the bottom, copying peers. This is where popularity is really essential. Now, the point about this is not to be right, not to be precise about it, to make it simple to think about what kind of thing you're dealing with. Because once you know what kind of thing you're dealing with, then you can go, okay, what kind of strategy might be useful? What kind of thing might fit here? And we can start to collect examples as well. So we ask ourselves, what kind of behavior is it? Where does it fit on this simple? What kind of thing are we dealing with? What is the most appropriate kind of strategy to deliver against that? Not what's the perfect strategy, but what's the most appropriate kind of. And then we can dig deeper in there. Now, as it happens, these are the headings of what we've discovered, the different types of strategy relevant to different kind of boxes. So yes, a better mousetrap or perceived better mousetrap or more emotional reward or whatever is important top left. In the Southwest, salience, just being the one that's most available, the one that mails me most, the one that shouts most, the one that's most famous, the one that I bought last time. All of that is really important down there. And includes expertise, authority, tradition being embedded in cultural context is really, really important for the Northeast, and then popularity, as Apple always do with their products. I've got I'm sure other people have a MacBook Air, beautiful silver, sleek thing, beautiful thin. The best bit of it though is the bit I never get to see, which is the backlit Apple logo on the lid, which is never for me, it's for somebody else. Ditto those white earpieces, they have terrible earpieces, but wonderful signaling devices. So look, we collected all these strategies together, and so that's what the book then leads to. The point being is, if you can help me work out what kind of thing's going on, then together we can work out what kind of strategies might be useful. Because we've all been round the block a number of times. We've all seen lots of different examples. And the more that we can look beyond what happened in the yellow fats market that we're working last year and the year before, and look maybe over a long period of time, or indeed look further out from the yellow fats market, and maybe there might be something to learn from the automotive world, I don't know. So that's it. What kind of thing? It doesn't mean this is a question that you need to ask the consumer, but think about it in the way you collect data. Because apart from anything else, if you are able to debrief a client, you don't have to use this model either, let's be honest, and say, it's this kind of thing we're dealing with. The client can handle that really quickly, and you can then fast track into the kind of things you need to be doing. They need to be doing in order to address them. And that's about it from me. Thank you all very much. If you've got any questions, please do shout. And I'll circulate also some links through Ken for other reading stuff that you might be interested in, and I hope you enjoyed that. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Mark. That was tremendous, and I will be one of the first people to be buying his new book, Copy, coming out in November. That's the plug I promised him. Just to say, please do send in your comments, do send in your questions. Mark will be delighted to see them. And if I can now just plug something for the AQR, we'll be keeping you informed about the forthcoming webinars when they come up. But we are also alive and well at the Marketing Week live show next week, Wednesday and Thursday at Earls Court. We have a stand there for the first time ever. So if you want to come and meet up with some of the AQR members, have a bit of a chat, we'd love to see you. And we've got some showpiece papers as well. On Thursday morning, we've got a conference area. We'll be showing the Prosper Riley Smith winners and runners-up, and a couple of other papers that have really impressed us in recent times. So please come along. We'd love to see you. Thank you very much, and goodbye.